Hey, it's Damon again. Welcome back to the next video in the series on upgrading the new 2018 JLU Rubicon. Now in the first video we kind of walked through the vehicle and some of the new updates and changes, things I like about it. Second video we installed some of the Yakima rooftop accessories like the awning system and cargo carrier and mounts for trail tools. And in this one now we're going to get to the front bumper and mount WARN's Zeon 10S synthetic winch. Now you need a mounting bracket to do that, and then the winch itself. There's your two part numbers. Now the 2018 JLU has a factory steel bumper option, and on my JK I had to buy a secondary, the Mopar steel bumper. In this case, get it right from the factory, and I would consider it 50% winch ready, meaning the bumper itself does not need to be replaced, but you do need to add a winch mounting plate. So I got to pull the bumper off, drop the skid plate, mount the winch plate from WARN, and then the winch can be mounted right to that winch plate, then put everything back together, wire it to the battery, and you're good to go. Now, a winch system, people ask, well, do you really need a winch? Well, that's kind of up to you. I can say that a winch in my past has helped me recover myself. I do a lot of things alone, so it's a good insurance policy when you are traveling alone. It's helped me recover friends' vehicles when they've gotten disabled. But it's even helped me relive out in the country. It's helped me remove when trees get blown down. It's helped me move trees off the road. It's helped me even extract bushes from our landscaping. So it's just a nice tool that I like to have in the front of my vehicles. So I'm gonna get to work. It should be in just a couple hours, and we should have a new WARN Zeon 10S on the new Rubicon. Now when you unbox the winch mounting plate, your instructions from WARN are going to be here. This is going to have everything you need to do to remove that bumper, the factory bumper, and then install the winch plate. This is where we're going to start. Now in the box, you'll see the winch plate and everything is all nicely packaged. So here's my instructions. I do encourage you to read them, and let's get started. First step's going to be removing the plastic fascia plate. It's not needed once the winch is in there, so it's just popping these two rivets out and getting rid of that plate. Once that's out, you can see now this is your sway bar disconnect that comes on Rubicons, and all that is now exposed. Next step is going underneath and dropping the skid plate from below. Dropping the skid plate is just 7 bolts, I believe, running around the perimeter, 13mm socket. Pull those out, and then this whole skid plate will drop right out. Set that there with the bolts, and those will be reused. Next step is disconnecting the fog light harness. The wiring harness is unplugged. Next step is removal of, there's 8 bolts holding the bumper to the frame, 2 on either side of the frame rail there. So I'll take those 8 bolts off, and then the whole bumper should be able to come right off. To help me access the bolts inside the bumper, I'm going to go ahead and take this piece off, which has to be removed also to get the winch in. So that's just a Torx 45 head. I'll remove those bolts. WARN supplies some nuts for the 5 bolts removed. They're cosmetic purposes only, but I'm going to go ahead and reinstall those and then button that up. The front plastic fascia for the fair lead is just press fit in, that just pops right out. Pro tip on the 8 bumper bolts, you're gonna need an 18mm deep well socket. Now the instructions didn't really call for that. It said a standard socket set's gonna work, but unless you have talents that I do not have, it's not gonna get you there. So you're gonna need the deep well socket fixed onto these bumper bolts to be able to get them out. Two bolts that hold the skid plate bracket onto the frame, those have to come off both sides. Here here. Alright, now that the bumper's off, we're going to be reinstalling now those skid plates that we took off using the same hardware. We're going to install the left and right winch plate brackets. They kind of go into those same holes, and then the hardware is reused from the skid plate bracket that we took off before. Now the winch plate itself is going to first mount to these left and right brackets we just hung, and there's carriage bolts that go on here. Now note, if you have a Rubicon, you can't really get that bolt in there, so you're going to have to loosen these pretty far to be able to get those carriage bolts in from the back to be able to hang the winch plate. Now WARN supplies some heavy-duty zip ties you put through the hole in the winch plate and around the frame member. As I cinch this up, it's going to line up this hole with this hole in the frame, so it'll bring it up and hold that in place while I then can mount the winch. Okay, so the winch plate is now kind of loosely held in place with these zip ties, and now it's time to go to the winch itself and get out the hardware and the winch for mounting onto that plate. So here in the winch box, we're going to have the handheld controller. We'll need that for a while, hopefully. The mounting hardware for the winch itself. The main body of the winch. Nice. And then the synthetic rope. What we're going to find in here, I think. Now I've done an initial spool loading of the synthetic line and get it on the spool. Then we'll be able to set the winch in place and feed the bear lead through and kind of get all that squared away. A little tip: when I got the winch initially spooled and about to load it and kind of thread it, but there's 4 nuts you have to load in these feet. And those are slippery, and every time you want to try to put the winch into the winch plate, it wants to slide out. So using some masking tape here to kind of hold those nuts in those slots so that as I load it, it won't fall out. Here on the inside of the bumper, a few things you're going to need to do. One, you're going to need to disconnect the fog light wiring. Just pull the Christmas trees out of some mounting points so it dangles when you remount it. And then WARN supplies some spacer plates that go over here on the outside of the main bumper. Now it's time to lift this back onto the Jeep. And I'm going to have to do some iterations, I think, figuring out the right sequence of tightening bolts. That 10S is pretty tight fit, and not quite sure how I'm going to get access to some of these bolts. So it's probably going to be a function of just getting some started, tightening, and then kind of shifting and tightening and seeing how it goes. We have the bumper on. I still got some bolts to tighten up, and I'm not gonna lie, getting all of these bolts back in place and nuts tightened is not easy. It takes a lot of time, and I'm playing with shifting the winch back and forth. and just trying to get access any way I can to get the interior 4 bolts tightened. It is a tight fit. But while I take a break from that, I'm gonna go ahead. I think I might have some weather moving in, so I'm gonna go ahead and install the spacer, and this is a license plate mounting bracket, and then go ahead and put the Haas on, the fair lead, and then I'll get back to tightening the bumper on as a whole. Alright, well, bumper's back on, skid plate's back on, and we have a winch. So, quick talk on the wire routing here, and what I did for the wire routing to come around the side. Some protective material under here, just come right out, follow the line, pops it up, and run it right to the battery. And then we now have power. So I got the winch cable installed. Goes both ways. So we're pretty much there. Now a couple nuances. Definitely it's really hard to get the interior 4 bolts reinstalled to hold the bumper on. Now it just takes a lot of time and it's tedious. Now I couldn't get the top inside right nut back onto that stud. I think I'm gonna have to get a nut that doesn't have a flare on it. It's just too tight. I can't get it to restart and get a tool to it. So yeah, I only have some basic tools. I think if I had an articulating head that would help quite a bit. I don't have one. The other 7 of the 8 I was able to get on just with, you know, a regular socket wrench set and some extensions. The skid plate underneath, when you put the spacers onto the bumper, it moves it out a little bit. So the 2 rearmost bolts, I couldn't quite get to line up. I'm gonna try to see if I can't loosen some things, try to get that lined up. If not, I'll just drill 2 new holes in and put those screws back in to hold the back in place. But 5 of the 7 went back in for the skid plate. It's good enough to drive for now, and then I'll figure out a way to better secure the rear there. But overall, that's it. We have now the WARN Zeon 10S on a 2018 Jeep Rubicon. Alright, let's do a quick kind of recap now that the install is really complete. And it's a day later now. I've run to the store and I've gotten the tools I needed to actually get everything back tightened up and buttoned up. So I'll go through some of those details here on the WARN 10S install on the JLU, but let's have a look at it quick. So here it is, kind of side to side. Now it's a tight fit, a full fit is what I would say. It is it's got about 1/2 inch clearance behind it. There's the cable routing in, and then when you look in the front, it's kind of tough to see, but you got another 1/2 inch plus clearance in the front there. Now I've gone ahead and installed Factor 55, their flat link. So that's going to work with soft shackles, and that's kind of what I wanted to do and like the look of, and doesn't rattle as much, and you're not banging all the finish off your tow hooks. So nice tight flat shackle, fits well with the fair lead. So a couple of last minute details that I had to deal with on getting it installed was, I mentioned how difficult some of the 4 of the 8 interior bumper bolts were, and this is the nut, and you can see that flange on that nut was the issue. And so I went to Napa and had them get me a nut without the flange, and then I was able to get in there and get it all tightened up. The most problematic one was kind of the upper inside right in here. It's very tight getting in there, and that was the one that gave me, again, that was the one that gave me the most trouble. So to solve that, some key tools you'll need: an 18mm long socket, so a deep socket, a 3-inch extension, and then having the wobble head on the socket wrench really helps. So once I was able to get the flange off that nut, I was able to get it started and get in there and get it tight. Now that was key. So I didn't have an 18mm deep socket to start, so I had to go to the store and get that, and then finally getting that flange off the nut is what helped finish that up. Other little tip is, now on mine, once there's some spacers that go in on front of the frame member, and it kind of pushes the overall bumper out about a 1/4 inch. Well, of the 7 skid plate bolts, that meant 2 of them are now a 1/4 inch off. So a 5/16 metal bit, and I was able to just elongate or kind of drill new holes under there and get those last 2 skid plate bolts back in. Now, WARN, I've talked to them and they said, oh, if you leave everything loose and kind of get in there, you know, you can get everything to kind of fit back. Something like a skid plate that's hidden, that's just sheet metal. I didn't even waste my time. I just drilled 2 new holes and put some quick finish on them so they don't rust that much. But it's a skid plate. So that's kind of it. That's the install. Overall, it looks really good. I really like the engagement. You can see now one of the issues, the JL ready, is this. If it's not JL ready, they were coming 180 and interfering. So they've changed the engagement lever, and as long as it's a 90 degrees to free spool, you're good to go. That's kind of what the whole JL ready system is. It's how far does this travel. So 90 degrees is what you want. Wiring to the battery was easy, very straightforward. And there you go. There's a WARN 10S fully buttoned up and ready to hit the trail. We're going to be at the Jeep Jamboree in Tennessee this weekend. So maybe we'll put it to some good use there. See you on the trail.